Welcome to the American Studies World War II project. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make the thank you screen. The thank you screen is going to have some thank you text. It will have the reference to the pie chart, any additional links, and finally it will have your pie chart. So when it's completed, it will look something like this. Here's the thank you text. Here's the reference to the pie chart. Here's any additional links, and that's optional. And then lastly, it'll have your pie chart, which calculates all the data from your table. So let's go ahead and get started. If you've made the reflection screen, you're going to be able to test your pie chart after this video is done. If you haven't, if you weren't the one responsible for making the reflection screen, you're only going to be able to test your pie chart once you compile all the projects together. So in this case, I've made the reflection screen. And so I'm going to go ahead and get started with my thank you screen. So again, I'm in code mode. Code mode doesn't give me the option to create new screens, but if I go to design mode, I can create new screens. So I'll go ahead and create a new screen, and I'll call it thank you screen. Again, in camel case with the U and the Y and U and S in screen capitalized. I'm going to leave the background color white. And the reason is because the pie chart, the background is white, and so it looks a little bit strange if you have different colors. Okay, so now what do I need to have? I need to have my thank you text. That's easy. I'll just drag over a label and drop it in here, and I'll call this thank you text. And I'll just say thanks for visiting our project. Okay. As mentioned in previous videos, if you wanted to change the text color or the background color or the font size, you could do that. I'm not going to do that for this video for the sake of time. If you haven't done that before, watch the other videos so you know how to do that. Next thing that I want to add is a reference to the pie chart. So I'll add in another label, and I'll call this thank you pie text. And I'll say, take a look at the pie chart to see how others voted. And I can adjust that as I need. Now, some of you might be asking, couldn't I have just written that in the thank you text? Yeah, you could have, but I wanted to give people the option if they wanted to move the thank you up here if they wanted to. So it's just so that they could separate it out. And lastly, the optional part is to include any links. I think it's strong if you, it's a good idea if you do include some links. It just shows the validity of your project, the research that you've done. Notice again, if I hover over this and click on it, I've got my thank you text. If I click on here, I see my thank you pie text. And last but not least, I'll have my thank you links and check out. I'll make a bit.ly link, and if you want to know how to make a bit.ly link, it's pretty straightforward. You can just visit the site, or you could ask me. War II battles. Okay, done. I'm going to move all of these things down a little bit lower because my pie chart will need some space. All right, now on to the pie chart. What I'm going to need for the pie chart here is actually this element called chart. And I'm going to just make that the entire length of the screen, or the entire width of the screen. And I'm going to call this thank you pie chart. Okay, so now that that's done, there's just no code for this pie chart to do the calculating. So I've got to add in the code. On Mr. Welland's Romanet page, there is going to be a link. I don't know what it's going to be titled, but that link is going to have the code for the pie chart. If I can pull it up here, it's going to look something like this: code for table creation. And it says right here, the code you need to copy below. Anything in red text needs to be changed by you. See page 2 for how this code looks in my app. So this is the code that you're going to copy over. And you can see that these places in red are what you need to change to whatever your options are. and I'll explain those more as we go on. If you were confused, you could look on page 2 and see how that looks in mine. So you could see I changed these things to my drop-down options and over here as well. Okay, so what you need to do is just go ahead and copy the whole thing over. So let's go ahead and just copy this. And let's get not into design mode, but obviously code mode. And in code mode, you may be in block mode. What you're just going to want to do is just change it to text and get to the last line. And watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to add in some comments by doing 2 forward slashes. And comments just kind of separate things out so that people can identify where things are in the code. So I'll put pie chart code. Comments are never read by your browser, so it just looks over it and ignores it. And so what I'm going to do is just paste everything in here. Okay, so now that I've got everything pasted, let's go ahead and change the things that need to be changed. So option 1, admiration. Please make sure that if it's capitalized in your drop-down, so for example, in my reflection screen, if it's capitalized in my drop-down, it needs to be capitalized in the code, okay? So admiration, curious, sad, proud. So admiration, curious, sad. And notice there's no space to put proud. Why is that? Because look at this if-else statement. It basically says, if you see the word admiration, throw it in this variable and add 1 to the option +1 votes. If you see the word curious, add a tally mark to the option 2 votes variable, which is initially set to 0. If you see the word sad, add a tally to the option 3 votes, which is initially set to 0. And obviously, if it's not any of these 3, it can just go right here. So we don't have to write out like, okay, if it's proud, then add it to this. It already knows that it's got to be the last choice. Okay, so now the last place that I need to put those words in is admiration, curious, sad, and proud. Oop. All right, that's it. I've got my code completed. One thing that you may want to check is just, again, make sure that your pie chart says thank you pie chart right here, and in the code it says thank you pie chart in the same exact way because this is going to be referenced. So let's go ahead and test it out. If I go to show blocks, it'll change all of that into blocks. And so now let me go ahead and run my code. So Jimmy, very nice. And then select my word, admiration, submit. Great. I've got my pie chart working. Now you may notice that these numbers look a little bit off, and there's a reason for that, and we'll take care of that when we compile everything together. But otherwise, you've got a working pie chart.